Imagine yourself in an ancient world where the Nile and Euphrates rivers were not just sources of life, but the most important roots of great civilizations. In these lands, bathed by the sun and blasted by sultry winds, cultures were born whose legacy still inspires awe and admiration today. Along the banks of these rivers, cities scattered like strings of pearls, full of life, trade, and cultural exchange. The civilizations that grew up on the banks of the Nile and Euphrates not only mastered agriculture and irrigation, but also created complex social structures, writing systems, and religious beliefs that had a profound influence on the course of history. The majestic pyramids loom on the horizon, their shining stones catching the sun's rays as if the gods themselves had indicated the place for their erection. These monumental structures, like arrows shot into the sky, symbolize the eternity and immutability of the pharaoh's power. The pyramids, erected with incredible precision and engineering skill, were not just tombs, but powerful symbols of religious and political power, demonstrating the greatness and ambition of the ancient Egyptian rulers. In Babylon, you can hear the splash of water running through the amazing tiered gardens. These gardens, like green oases in the middle of the desert, were a marvel of engineering and the realization of a dream of paradise on earth. The hanging gardens of Semiramis, if they ever existed, represented an incredible achievement in irrigation and landscape design, demonstrating man's ability to create beauty and prosperity even under the most adverse conditions. The statue of Zeus at Olympia stands so grandiose that it seems as if his smile animates time itself. The gaze of this god, filled with majesty and tranquility, inspired awe and faith in justice. The statue of Zeus, created by Phidias, was not only a religious object but also a masterpiece of art, embodying the Greek ideals of beauty, harmony, and majesty, as well as the power and wisdom of the supreme god. This world was full of secrets, aspirations, and an unquenchable thirst for history. Every stone, every column, every bas-relief carried a message to posterity, telling of the greatness of the rulers, the skill of the craftsmen, and the belief in the gods. The ancient world was full of mysteries and the unknown, and people of that time sought not only to understand the world around them, but also to leave something eternal in it that would outlive their own lives and remind future generations of their existence and achievements. The seven wonders of the world are not just buildings. They are the embodiment of ambition, genius, and faith in the immortality of the human spirit. It was as if they were saying, "Look what we can do. We will never be forgotten." These structures, astonishing in their scale, beauty, and complexity of execution, were designed not only to amaze contemporaries, but also to defy time, to become eternal monuments to human capabilities. The seven wonders of the world represented the high point of the ancient world's achievements in architecture, sculpture, and engineering, demonstrating the incredible capabilities of the human mind and labor. This list, which has come down to us from the depths of centuries, has become a kind of symbol of the indomitable will of man, his ability to overcome the impossible. But how did the idea to collect the seven wonders come about? The roots of this list go back to antiquity, when the world was ruled by philosophers, travelers, and scientists who sought to classify and comprehend everything around them. In an age when knowledge was spread orally and in manuscripts, compiling lists and classifications was an important way of organizing information and passing it on to posterity. The ancient Greeks, known for their love of order and classification, sought to organize knowledge about everything from nature and the cosmos to human achievements. Herodotus, known as the father of history, and his followers were the first to describe the great creations of the time. In their writings, they mention the majestic temples, statues, and other structures that struck their imagination during their travels. However, the final list was formed somewhat later, thanks to the writings of Callimachus of Cyrene, librarian of the Library of Alexandria. It was in Alexandria, the center of Hellenistic culture and knowledge, that an attempt was made to bring together the most outstanding creations of human hands. The Library of Alexandria, as the largest repository of knowledge in the ancient world, was the ideal place to compile such a list, bringing together information on the most impressive constructions of the time. Why 7? In the ancient world, this number was considered sacred, symbolizing completeness and perfection. 7 days of the week, 7 planets known at the time, 7 notes in a scale. The number 7 permeated the culture and beliefs of many peoples. Deeply rooted in various cultures and religions, the number 7 was considered magical and symbolic, associated with wholeness, harmony, and completeness. The choice of the 7 wonders of the world was probably related to this symbolic meaning, emphasizing their exclusivity and fullness of splendor. These wonders emerged at a time when civilizations were reaching unprecedented heights in architecture, engineering, and art. Egyptian pharaohs, Babylonian rulers, and Greek tyrants used their wealth to erect buildings that would survive the ages. These monumental projects required vast resources, the labor of thousands of people, and the advanced knowledge of their time. But it is important to realize that they were not built simply for beauty. The pyramids were, for example, the embodiment of divine majesty worshipped by millions. They were not only the tombs of the pharaohs, but also symbols of their power, their connection to the gods, and their belief in the afterlife. The world around them was a very different place than it is today. Imagine caravans crossing vast desert sands to bring precious materials for construction, sailors conquering rough waters to bring exotic wood and stone. All this is part of a story that shows how far a man can go, driven by dreams and the pursuit of immortal glory. The 7 wonders of the world are a bridge between the past and the present. They not only tell us about the achievements of those times, but also remind us that dreams can transcend the ages. Their stories inspire our own accomplishments and remind us of the greatness of human potential. Now let's travel back in time and learn how each of these majestic structures came into existence, who created them and why, and how they changed the world. We will immerse ourselves in the atmosphere of ancient civilizations, learn about the technologies, beliefs, and people behind the creation of these immortal masterpieces. We will explore every detail of their creation, uncover the secrets of their construction, and learn about the people who brought these grandiose designs to life, leaving us a legacy of eternal symbols of human genius. Now let us move to Egypt, the country where the history of the wonders of the world began. Among the sands and scorching sun of the desert stands a monumental structure that still amazes with its grandeur, the Great Pyramid. The only one of the 7 wonders of the world to survive to this day. The pyramid was built around 2560 BC, during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, or Cheops. This period of the Old Kingdom was the heyday of Egyptian civilization, when pharaohs wielded unlimited power and vast resources. The ancient kingdom era in Egypt was a period of political stability, economic prosperity, and cultural flourishing, when the foundations of Egyptian civilization were laid and its most iconic monuments were created. At nearly 147 meters high, it was the largest structure in the world for thousands of years. Today, it is slightly lower due to the loss of the upper layers of cladding, but it remains a symbol of the genius and ambition of the ancient Egyptian civilization. Its strict geometric forms, precisely oriented on the sides of the world, and its huge size still cause admiration and amazement. The greatness of the Great Pyramid of Cheops is not only in its size, but also in its geometric precision, perfection of forms, and harmonious combination with the surrounding landscape, which makes it a truly unique and inimitable construction. The process of its construction is a real puzzle. For creation of a pyramid, it was required about 2.3 million stone blocks, which total weight is estimated in 6 million tons. Each block, depending on its size, weighed from 2.5 to 80 tons. The extraction, transportation, and installation of these blocks required incredible organization, engineering knowledge, and physical strength. How did the ancient Egyptians move such massive stones? Scholars believe they used sleds sliding over wet sand to minimize friction. Wetting the sand reduced the friction force, allowing workers to pull heavy blocks with less effort. Recent discoveries have shown that the Egyptians built special channels and platforms to deliver stone blocks directly to the construction site. The system of canals and ramps allowed the blocks to be transported efficiently from the quarries to the construction site, minimizing distance and time. The pyramid was originally covered with a facing stone of white limestone, which turned it into a dazzling beacon in the desert in the sunlight. Smooth and shining facing made the pyramid even more majestic and striking. This covering, alas, has almost completely disappeared, but once it made the pyramid truly unforgettable. Only a few fragments of the facing have survived to this day, allowing us to visualize its original appearance. The original facing of the pyramid, glittering in the sun, made it visible from afar, and probably played an important symbolic role, reflecting the divine radiance of the pharaoh and his eternal connection with the sun. The technology of construction of a pyramid still causes disputes. Some suppose that blocks were raised by means of straight ramps, which were lengthened as the pyramid was erected. Long and gentle ramps allowed to gradually raise blocks on height, but demanded huge quantity of material and labor force. Others are certain that spiral ramps or a complex system of levers were used. Spiral ramps winding around the pyramid may have been more efficient, but their construction and use was also a challenge. Regardless of the method, it was an engineering marvel that is still admired today. The creation of such a monumental structure in an era when there were no modern technologies testifies to the high level of knowledge and organization of the ancient Egyptians. However, the pyramid was not just an engineering project, it had a deep spiritual significance. Pharaoh Khufu considered himself a divine mediator between earth and heaven, and the pyramid was his eternal dwelling. The pyramid was not only a tomb, but also a symbol of the eternal life and divine authority of the pharaoh. The central burial chamber, carved out of granite, was at the back of the pyramid. Granite, a strong and durable material, was chosen to ensure the preservation of the burial chamber. It was guarded by complex systems of passageways and massive stone stoppers that were supposed to protect the burial site from looters. The system of labyrinths, false corridors, and stone traps was designed to deter and delay intruders. The Egyptian workers who created the pyramid were provided with everything necessary for hard labor. Excavations have shown that workers lived in organized settlements and received food, water, and medical care. Recent excavations have shown that many workers were skilled craftsmen, not slaves as long believed. This discovery has changed the way we think about pyramid building and the role of laborers in ancient Egypt. They were not just faceless labor force, but qualified specialists who were proud of their work and made a huge contribution to the creation of this wonder of the world. Archaeological researches of the last decades confirm that the construction of pyramids was an organized and well-planned enterprise, in which qualified workers participated and received decent pay and working conditions. When it comes to the construction of the Great Pyramid of Cheops, one can't help but wonder how the ancient Egyptians, lacking modern technology, were able to create such a grandiose structure. The answer lies in their amazing technical achievements, which were ahead of their time. First of all, the precision of the pyramid's design is striking. Its sides are oriented almost perfectly on the sides of the world, and the base is leveled with the minimum height difference. Such accuracy of orientation and alignment testifies to the high level of astronomical and geodesic knowledge of ancient Egyptians. To create a level foundation, craftsmen used the technique of leveling with water, which allowed for exceptional stability of the structure. By pouring water over the site and leveling the surface with water, a perfectly level base for the pyramid was created. Construction required precise calculation and organization. The Egyptians demonstrated skill in using ramps to lift blocks. One possible technology was spiral ramps, which reduced the angle of inclination and distributed the effort. A spiral ramp winding around the pyramid allowed blocks to be lifted gradually, minimizing the need for steep ascents. Engineering solutions of ancient Egyptians, applied at construction of pyramids, testify to the high level of their knowledge in the field of mathematics, geometry, mechanics, and organization of work. Ramps are inclined structures that the ancient Egyptians used to lift heavy stone blocks to a height when building a pyramid. Imagine a long, gentle slide to pull a stone upward. How did it work? Blocks of stone were placed on sleds. The sleds, made of wood, made it easier to move the heavy blocks down the slope. These sleds were pulled by workers along the ramp's surface. To make the sleds slide more easily, the sand underneath them was wetted to make the work easier. Wetting the sand reduced friction, allowing workers to pull the sleds with less effort. As the pyramid grew taller, the ramp was lengthened or a new ramp was made to continue lifting the blocks. As the pyramid grew, ramps were lengthened and widened to provide constant access to the construction site. Ramps could be different, straight, leading to one side of the pyramid, or spiral, winding around the pyramid. The spiral ramp allowed the stones to be lifted gradually without creating too steep a slope. When the block was at the right height, it was stacked into the pyramid structure. This was an incredibly labor-intensive but efficient system, especially considering that the Egyptians did not have modern cranes. The use of ramps, sleds, and manpower allowed the ancient Egyptians to lift and install multi-ton blocks to significant heights. Such engineering solutions helped to lift massive blocks to heights of more than 140 meters. The ramp system was a key element in the construction of the pyramid, allowing the realization of this grandiose project. Different types of ramps, straight, spiral, and zigzag, could be used at different stages of construction, depending on the height and angle of ascent, providing flexibility and efficiency of the construction process. The work with granite deserves special admiration. These dense and heavy stones were delivered and worked to perfect smoothness with the help of copper tools, sand, and water. Granite quarried in the quarries of Aswan was transported down the Nile on special barges. Copper tools, although softer than granite, combined with the abrasive properties of sand and water, allowed the Egyptians to work this hard material. This technology was incredibly labor-intensive, but the quality of the finish on the pyramid's interior still amazes to this day. Smooth granite surfaces of internal chambers of the pyramid testify to the highest skill of ancient Egyptian stonemasons. Ancient Egyptians also used a system of unloading chambers above the burial chamber to redistribute the pressure from massive layers of stone blocks. Unloading chambers located above the burial chamber served to reduce the pressure of the overlying stone blocks on the ceiling of the chamber, preventing its collapse. This solution demonstrated their deep understanding of the physics and structure of buildings. Engineering solutions applied during the construction of the pyramid testify to the high level of knowledge of ancient Egyptians in the field of mathematics, geometry, astronomy, and mechanics. The use of granite, one of the most strong and durable materials for construction of internal chambers of the pyramid, testifies to aspiration of ancient Egyptians to provide eternal safety of burial of the pharaoh and his post-mortem life. The Great Pyramid of Cheops not only amazes with its size and engineering achievements, but is also shrouded in many myths and mysteries that have troubled mankind for thousands of years. These stories are not mere fictions. They reflect our thirst to unravel the mysteries of the past and touch the greatness of ancient civilizations. One of the most popular myths is the assumption that the Pyramid of Cheops is not just a tomb, but a device with a special energy power. Theories about the energy purpose of pyramids, their ability to generate or concentrate energy, attract the attention of many researchers and esotericists. Some supporters of this theory believe that the pyramid could have been used to generate energy, and its shape and orientation to the sides of the world have special significance. For example, in its proportions they find the so-called golden section, mathematical harmony which is found in nature and architecture. Golden section, a proportion found in nature and art, found in the proportions of the pyramid, generates hypotheses about its special mathematical and harmonic meaning. These coincidences generate hypotheses that the ancient Egyptians may have possessed knowledge lost to us. Assumptions about the existence of lost knowledge and technology of the ancient Egyptians are a popular topic in alternative history and esotericism. The myths and legends surrounding the Pyramid of Cheops make it not only a historical monument, but also an object of mystical interest, attracting researchers, esotericists, and tourists from all over the world. Another mystery remains why there are no traditional paintings or bas-reliefs inside the pyramid, which are typical of most tombs. Neither gods nor scenes from the afterlife, nor prayers dedicated to the pharaoh were found in its inner chambers. The absence of decorative ornamentation, typical of other tombs of pharaohs, raises questions about the reasons for such asceticism and the special purpose of the pyramid. This lack of decorative elements raises many questions. Perhaps the pyramid had a special ritual purpose, or its interior decoration was not completed. Assumptions about the ritual or symbolic meaning of the pyramid, different from the traditional tomb, continue to be discussed by researchers. There are also mystical hypotheses suggesting that the pyramid could have been built by representatives of extraterrestrial civilization. Adherents of this idea point to the incredible accuracy of joining blocks, the mass of stones, and the complexity of their transportation. Theories about extraterrestrial origin of pyramids, though they have no scientific confirmation, remain popular in mass culture and among supporters of alternative history. Of course, this theory is not confirmed by scientific facts, but it adds a halo of mysticism and intrigue to the pyramid. Despite the lack of scientific evidence, the hypothesis of extraterrestrial origin of the pyramids continues to excite minds and inspire the search for new explanations of the greatness and mystery of this ancient wonder. The discovery of the pyramid continues. In the 19th century, British engineer Wart Wyss discovered several unloading chambers above the burial chamber. These spaces were probably used to redistribute the weight of the stones to prevent collapse. The discovery of the unloading chambers confirmed the engineering of the pyramid's construction and the burial chamber's pressure protection system. However, modern technologies, such as muon scanning, have revealed new voids, one of which is a huge room located above the Great Gallery. Muon scanning, a non-destructive method of investigation, has allowed the discovery of previously unknown cavities inside the pyramid, including the Great Void. Scientists are still debating its purpose. Was it another unloading chamber, a secret room, or something else? The purpose of the Great Void remains a mystery, generating various hypotheses about its functionality and possible contents. The discovery of the Great Void in 2017 became a sensation and once again attracted the attention of the world community to the mysteries of the Great Pyramid, stimulating further research and search for answers to unsolved questions. Legends also surround the treasures of Cheops. In ancient times, it was believed that the pharaoh was buried with incredible wealth, including gold, precious stones, and rare artifacts. Representations of pharaoh's treasures buried with them are widespread in popular culture and archaeology. However, no treasure was ever found. Probably robbers plundered the pyramid in antiquity. The assumption that robbers looted the pyramid in antiquity is the most likely explanation for the lack of treasure. But there are also those who believe that the secret chambers hiding these riches have yet to be found. Hopes of discovering hidden chambers and treasures in the pyramid continue to inspire researchers and archaeologists. The pyramid's connection to astronomy is another of the great mysteries. Some researchers claim that the three Great Pyramids of Giza are arranged to correspond to the stars of Orion's belt. Theories about the astronomical orientation of the Pyramids of Giza and their relationship to the constellation of Orion are the subject of debate and research. This is supported by studies showing that the ancient Egyptians paid great attention to astronomy. The astronomical knowledge of the ancient Egyptians played an important role in their culture, religion, and architecture. Besides, ventilation shafts inside the pyramid are oriented so as to coincide with the position of stars, such as Sirius and Al-Natak, that strengthens the feeling of its connection with the heavens. Orientation of ventilation shafts to certain stars strengthens the hypothesis about astronomical meaning of the pyramid. Astronomical orientation of pyramids and their connection with stars probably reflect religious beliefs of ancient Egyptians about an afterlife and a journey of a pharaoh's soul to the stars. Many mysteries of the pyramid are connected with the personality of Pharaoh Khufu. Historians still debate whether he was a despotic ruler who forced thousands of workers to build the pyramid, or a wise leader who inspired his subjects to build this grandiose monument. The assessment of the personality of Pharaoh Khufu and his role in the construction of the pyramid remains the subject of historical discussions and interpretations. Finally, one of the most fascinating legends says that the Great Pyramid holds the secrets of eternity, that texts or artifacts are hidden inside it that will reveal the lost knowledge of ancient civilizations. Legends of the secrets of eternity and lost knowledge stored in the pyramid continue to inspire imagination and exploration. The Pyramid of Cheops remains not only the greatest architectural achievement, but also a symbol of the human quest to unravel the unknown. Each new discovery opens up more questions, making it a timeless mystery that continues to inspire explorers and dreamers. The Great Pyramid of Cheops, despite all the research and discoveries, still holds many mysteries waiting to be uncovered. The Great Pyramid of Cheops, as an eternal guardian of ancient mysteries, continues to beckon and fascinate us with its mystery, remaining a mute witness to the greatness and mysteries of ancient Egyptian civilization. After the mysteries and engineering achievements of the Great Pyramid of Cheops, we are transported to a completely different world, a green oasis that supposedly rose among the sands of ancient Babylon. The Hanging Gardens of Semiramis, the second of the seven wonders of the world, became a symbol of the human dream of harmony between nature and architecture. But were they reality or myth? The question of the reality of the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis remains one of the most controversial in the history of the ancient world. The Hanging Gardens were described as a grandiose structure, cascades of terraces lined with flowers, trees, and shrubs that gave the illusion of hanging in the air. According to legend, The gardens were built by King Nebuchadnezzar II in the 6th century BC. King Nebuchadnezzar II, ruler of the New Babylonian Kingdom, is known for his building projects in Babylon, including the Ishtar Gate and the Tower of Babel. The gardens were not only to adorn the palace, but also to symbolize the power of the king, who subordinated nature to his will. The creation of an artificial oasis in arid Babylon was meant to emphasize the king's power and wealth, his ability to transform the environment. The Hanging Gardens of Semiramis, if they ever existed, would have become a symbol of the luxury, power, and technological superiority of the New Babylonian Kingdom, demonstrating to the world its wealth and cultural greatness. However, the first thing that raises doubts is the lack of mention of gardens in the texts of Nebuchadnezzar's time itself. The chronicles of that period, including the cuneiform tablets, tell in detail about the construction of palaces and temples, and nowhere mention the miraculous gardens. The absence of contemporary references to gardens in Babylonian texts is one of the main arguments in favor of their mythical character. The first descriptions of gardens appeared only a few centuries later in the writings of ancient authors such as Strabo and Diodorus of Sicily. Ancient authors writing several centuries after the alleged establishment of the gardens are the main sources of information about them. They may have been based on oral legends or erroneous interpretations of earlier records. Another question is, how could such a complex irrigation system have been created in desert conditions? According to legends, water was delivered to the upper terraces by a mechanism resembling Archimedes' screw, a device that lifted water to great heights. The Archimedes screw, a screw pump, could have been used to lift water to higher altitudes, but its use in the Hanging Gardens remains a hypothesis. This system must have constantly supplied water to huge terraces full of plants, which would have required an incredible level of knowledge in hydraulics. However, no evidence of such a mechanism has yet been found in Babylon. Archaeological finds have yet to confirm the existence of the sophisticated irrigation system needed to maintain the Hanging Gardens. The lack of archaeological evidence for the existence of the Hanging Gardens in Babylon and the paucity of written sources contemporary with them casts doubt on their reality and leaves them more of a legend than a historical fact. An alternative hypothesis moves the gardens from Babylon to Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire. Some historians believe that the creator of the gardens may have been the Assyrian king Sennacherib, who was famous for his engineering achievements. The Assyrian king Sennacherib, known for his building projects and irrigation systems, is seen as an alternative candidate for the creator of the Hanging Gardens. Indeed, traces of a complex system of canals and aqueducts that may have been used for irrigation have been found in Nineveh. Archaeological finds in Nineveh indicate the existence of a well-developed water supply system that could have been used to irrigate gardens. These findings make the version of Nineveh more plausible than the traditional legend of Babylon. The origin of the name Gardens of Semiramis is no less mysterious. Semiramis, after whom they are named, is a mythological rather than historical figure. Semiramis, the legendary queen of Assyria, is more of a mythological character than a historical figure. Her image is shrouded in legends and myths. Her image represents strength, beauty, and wisdom. But there is no real evidence of her existence. Scholars believe that the name Semiramis may have been assigned to the gardens later to associate them with the legendary queen. But let's learn a little about who that Semiramis was. Her figure is shrouded in myth and mystery, and she remains one of the most fascinating women of antiquity. Semiramis, the legendary queen whose image has inspired artists and writers for centuries, remains a mysterious figure in history. The image of Semiramis, combining the features of a wise ruler, a warrior queen, and a beautiful woman, has become one of the most vivid and memorable in world history and mythology. Semiramis, or Shamuramat as she was known in Assyria, was a real historical person. She was the wife of the Assyrian king Shamshi-Adad V, who ruled in the 9th century BC. Shamuramat, an Assyrian queen, was the wife of King Shamshi-Adad V and regent under her son Adad-nirari III. After her husband's death, she became regent under her son Adad-nirari II, temporarily assuming control of one of the most powerful empires of the time. The regency of Shamuramat, who ruled Assyria during a period of political instability, is a historical fact. This fact already makes her unique for an era when women rarely played an active role in politics. However, her story is not limited to dry facts. Greek and Roman historians such as Diodorus of Sicily and Herodotus turned Semiramis into an almost mythical figure. Greek and Roman historians who wrote about Semiramis several centuries after her life idealized and mythologized her image. In their descriptions, she appeared as a wise, powerful, and incredibly beautiful woman whose exploits bordered on legend. Her name was associated with the founding of Babylon and the building of walls, temples, and palaces. Legends attribute Semiramis to the founding of Babylon and the construction of many architectural marvels, including the Hanging Gardens. Many believed that she was the inspiration or even the creator of the Hanging Gardens, which became one of the 7 wonders of the world. The legendary image of Semiramis, created by ancient authors, overshadowed the historical Shahmuramat, turning her into a symbol of female power, wisdom, and greatness, and the Hanging Gardens were associated with her name, even if she had no direct relation to them. Semiramis was also portrayed as a skillful military leader who expanded the borders of the empire. According to one legend, she even attempted to conquer India, but was forced to retreat after meeting strong resistance. Legends of Semiramis's military campaigns, including the attempted conquest of India, emphasize her image as a powerful ruler and military leader. Other stories emphasize her wisdom and ability to find a way out of the most difficult situations, which kept her in power in a world ruled by strong men. Semiramis's wisdom and political acumen are also important features of her legendary image. Legends about her origins also add to her mystique. According to one story, she was the daughter of the goddess Derceto, who abandoned her newborn daughter to her fate. The girl was found by a shepherd, and then she was noticed and taken as a wife by the king. The mythological origin of Semiramis, her connection with the goddess Derceto, and her miraculous rescue in infancy add to her image an element of divinity and chosenness. This mythical plot was probably added later to emphasize her divine origin and greatness. However, many of her feats described in ancient texts are not supported by historical data. Historians believe that her actual role was more modest. As regent, she ruled the state in times of instability and consolidated her son's power. Nevertheless, her name became a symbol of female strength and leadership. Semiramis became a collective image that incorporated the traits of various influential women and rulers. She was and remains a legend, an embodiment of beauty, wisdom, and power. Although her achievements have been exaggerated, she is still inspiring today, remaining an example of how legend can transcend reality. The legend of Semiramis, even if it does not fully correspond to historical reality, continues to live on and inspire, reminding us of the power of the human imagination and the ability to create myths that survive the ages. What might the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis have looked like, if they really existed? Descriptions of the gardens preserved in the works of ancient authors inspire researchers and artists to create their image. Hypothetical reconstructions based on ancient texts and engineering knowledge allow us to imagine what this green oasis might have been like. Imagine a massive, multi-level structure built of brick or stone. Each terrace, supported by sturdy columns and arches, served as a base for lush vegetation. Trees, shrubs, and flowers were arranged so that the cascades of greenery descending from the upper terraces created the illusion of hanging gardens floating in the air. The terraces were connected by staircases or sloping paths, allowing residents and guests to stroll among the lush vegetation. Reconstructions of the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis are impressive depictions of tiered terraces buried in greenery, with waterfalls, fountains, and shady alleys, creating a paradise in the midst of arid Babylon. The centerpiece of the garden was probably an elaborate water supply system. Ancient texts describe a mechanism that brought water from the Euphrates River to the top of the structure. It may have been a screw-like mechanism or a series of water elevators that lifted water to the upper terraces. The water then flowed down through cascades or small streams, irrigating the plants on each level. The sound of the flowing water created an atmosphere of calm and coolness, filling the gardens with the sounds of nature. The gardens probably provided a striking contrast to the surrounding desert terrain. The vegetation may have included exotic trees and flowers imported from various regions, such as Mydia, the birthplace of Queen Amytis. Pomegranates, cypresses, date palms, jasmine, and roses may have been among the plants growing there, adding not only to the beauty, but also to the fragrance that filled the air. Asphalt and burnt bricks, which were characteristic of Babylonian architecture, were used to give the structures strength. A layer of stone and thatch insulation impregnated with resin could prevent water leakage, which was especially important to keep the terraces in good condition. The gardens must have been surrounded by palace walls, protecting them from the scorching sun and desert wind. In the evening, as the sun set over the horizon, the gardens may have been filled with the golden hues of sunset, making them even more majestic. The gardens may have contained fountains, statues, and benches for relaxation, making it a true paradise for the ruling elite. Although all these details remain hypothetical, the reconstructions allow us to see how magnificent and amazing this miracle oasis could have been. The Hanging Gardens of Semiramis, if they really existed, were not only a symbol of engineering skill, but also the embodiment of a dream of the harmony of nature and human genius. The Hanging Gardens of Semiramis, even if they are only a legend, remain an inspiring symbol of the human ability to create beauty and harmony in the most unexpected places, reminding us of the eternal dream of a Garden of Eden on earth. After the majesty and mystery of the Hanging Gardens, we are transported to Greece, a land of philosophy, art, and deep worship of its gods. At the heart of this civilization, in the sacred Olympia, was one of the 7 wonders of the world, the statue of Zeus, which became the embodiment of the majesty and power of the supreme god of the Greek pantheon, the Lord of thunder and lightning, as well as the protector of order and justice. Olympia, where the main sanctuary of Zeus was located, became a symbol of the unity of the Greek polis. Not only religious rites were performed here, but also the Olympic Games were held in his honor. The Games served not only as a sporting competition, but also as an expression of the Greek ideals of harmony of mind and spirit, ideals that were associated with Zeus. The statue of Zeus, created by the famous sculptor Phidias around 435 BC, was not just a work of art, it became a symbol of the god's absolute power over the world. The statue was about 12 meters high, making it one of the largest sculptures. Zeus was depicted seated on a throne, his imposing figure representing greatness and power. In one hand, he held a statue of Nike, the goddess of victory, symbolizing triumph, and in the other a scepter with an eagle, which represented his power over earth and sky. The throne itself was a true masterpiece, decorated with ivory and precious stones. On its surface, Phidias depicted scenes from Greek mythology, emphasizing the divine origin of Zeus and his victory over chaos. This combination of exquisite materials and detailed carvings made the statue incredibly impressive, especially in combination with the temple in which it was located. The statue of Zeus at Olympia, being the pinnacle of Phidias's artistic skill, became not only a religious symbol, but also the embodiment of Greek ideals of beauty, harmony, majesty, and divine power. For the ancient Greeks, a statue was not only an object of worship, but also the embodiment of an ideal. It symbolized the harmony between the human and the divine, showing how art could reflect the greatness of the gods. The majestic figure of Zeus inspired awe and reverence, reminding of his omnipotence. Olympia became a place of pilgrimage, where people from all over Greece flocked to see this masterpiece. The statue of Zeus was an inspiration, a reminder of the strength and unity of the Hellenes and the importance of religion in their lives. For the ancient Greeks, it was not just a representation of a god, but a symbol of their culture, faith, and striving for perfection. The creation of the statue of Zeus at Olympia was one of the most complex and ambitious projects of antiquity, demonstrating the incredible skill of ancient Greek sculptors. Phidias, a famous master of his time, used unique artistic and engineering techniques to create not just a statue, but an image that would inspire awe and recall the divine power of Zeus. The base of the sculpture was a wooden frame that served as a skeleton for attaching other materials. Special inserts and joints treated with moisture-resistant compounds were used to strengthen the structure. The frame was hidden under layers of gold and ivory. The chryselephantine technique used by Phidias to create the statue of Zeus combined precious materials, such as gold and ivory, with the skill of carving and casting to create a work of art of striking beauty and majesty. Thin sheets of gold were used to add brightness and luster to Zeus's clothes. This material symbolized divine radiance, and every detail of his armor, sandals, and cape was decorated with fine ornaments that enhanced the overall impression of wealth and power. Scenes from mythology, including battles of gods and titans, emphasized the victorious nature of Zeus. The throne of Zeus was not just a stand, but a work of art in its own right. It was inlaid with precious stones. On the back and armrests of the throne, Phidias created carved images of mythological creatures, emphasizing the idea of divine power and alluding to the eagle and lightning, attributes of Zeus himself. Each of the carvings was not just decorative, but told a story connecting Zeus to his role as the supreme god. The details of the statue emphasized its grandeur. The falling light and the statuette of Nike in the god's hand looked so delicate and elaborate that it was considered a separate work of art. The scepter that Zeus held in his other hand was adorned with emeralds and other jewels. The details of the statue of Zeus, from the subtle folds of his clothing to the expressive features of his face, were meticulously worked out by Phidias, demonstrating his unrivaled skill and attention to detail, making the statue lifelike and realistic. The light falling through the windows was carefully planned to illuminate the figure of Zeus in such a way that he appeared radiant, as if alive. The effect was enhanced by the reflection of light from the gold and elephantine surfaces, creating a mystical atmosphere. Phidias's workshop in Olympia, where the statue was created, was equipped with the latest technology of the time. The best craftsmen worked here, working with metals, ivory, and wood. The remains of molds and tools found in this workshop show how labor-intensive and precise the process of creating the statue was. The story of the statue of Zeus in Olympia ended tragically and remains a mystery that researchers are still trying to unravel. This masterpiece of ancient art, created to praise the supreme god of the ancient Greeks, survived centuries of admiration, but eventually disappeared, leaving behind only memories and legends. For several centuries, the statue of Zeus adorned the temple at Olympia, attracting pilgrims from all over Greece and other parts of the Mediterranean. It was not only a religious object, but also a symbol of cultural greatness. The statue of Zeus at Olympia, despite its loss, continues to live in the memory of mankind as a symbol of the greatness of ancient art and religious worship, inspiring painters and sculptors to create new masterpieces. However, with the decline of the Olympic Games and the banning of pagan rituals in 394 AD by decree of Emperor Theodosius I, the Temple of Zeus lost its importance. Over time, its structures began to collapse, leaving the statue without proper protection. The fate of the statue itself is still a matter of debate. One version says that in the 5th century AD, the statue was moved to Constantinople, the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire. There, it was supposedly installed in a palace to continue to inspire people with its beauty and grandeur. However, in 475, Constantinople suffered a major fire that destroyed many buildings and valuables, probably including the statue of Zeus. This fire is considered one of the possible reasons for its disappearance. Other researchers suggest that the statue may have remained in Olympia and been destroyed by natural disasters. Earthquakes that repeatedly struck the region destroyed the Temple of Zeus and surrounding buildings. If the statue did remain in its original location, it may have been damaged or destroyed under the rubble of the temple. Earthquakes and fires, a frequent occurrence in the ancient world, caused the death of many architectural masterpieces, including the statue of Zeus at Olympia, demonstrating the vulnerability of even the most magnificent creations to the forces of nature and time. There is also a theory that the statue was destroyed by Christian fanatics, who in late antiquity sought to destroy symbols of pagan religion. The gold and ivory used in its creation may have been dismantled and reused, which could also have contributed to its disappearance. Archaeological discoveries in the workshop of Phidias, where the statue was created, allow us to reconstruct some details of its appearance and manufacturing techniques. However, no physical fragments of the statue itself have ever been found, making it one of the greatest losses of cultural heritage. Today, we can only see the ruins of the Temple of Zeus in Olympia, which was once home to this majestic sculpture. Nevertheless, its memory lives on through ancient texts, descriptions by ancient travelers, and reconstructions by modern artists. The statue's disappearance has become a symbol of how even the greatest works of art can be lost to time, leaving behind only memories and inspiration for future generations. The memory of the statue of Zeus at Olympia, preserved in the descriptions of ancient authors and recreated in modern reconstructions, continues to inspire us and remind us of the greatness of Greek art and culture, whose contribution to world civilization is inestimable. After the grandeur of the statue of Zeus at Olympia and the wisdom of the supreme god, we move to Asia Minor, to ancient Ephesus, to explore another wonder of the world, the Temple of Artemis. This grandiose temple, dedicated to the goddess of nature, hunting, and fertility, was not just a religious site. It became the epitome of artistic and engineering excellence, as well as the center of cultural and economic life in the ancient world. The Temple of Artemis was considered a wonder of the world primarily because of its scale and grandeur. Built in the 6th century BC, it was the largest temple of its time, far surpassing in size even the famous Parthenon in Athens. It was a building of incredible size. The length of the temple exceeded 115 meters, width about 55 meters, the height of the columns reached 20 meters. The temple was supported by 127 columns arranged in several rows, which created the impression of a grandiose forest of marble. These columns not only served as a support, but also symbolized the harmony between nature and human art. The Temple of Artemis in Ephesus, with its enormous size and the splendor of its colonnade, became a symbol of the wealth, power, and cultural significance of the city of Ephesus, one of the largest and most important cities of the ancient world. However, it was not only the size that made the Temple of Artemis special, its importance to the people of Ephesus and the entire Greek world was immense. Artemis was one of the most revered goddesses of the Greek pantheon, representing fertility, protection of women, and harmony with nature. Ephesus was considered her sacred city, and the temple was the place where the goddess showed her power and mercy. The people of the city believed that Artemis was their protector. The temple became a place of pilgrimage for people from all over Greece and other regions who came to bring gifts and honor the goddess. The Temple of Artemis was not only a religious center but also a cultural symbol. Its construction and maintenance demonstrated the wealth and power of Ephesus. Merchants, artisans, and travelers flocked here, bringing their goods, ideas, and customs. The temple became a hub connecting different cultures and regions, strengthening Ephesus' role as an international center. The unique location of the temple also emphasized its significance. It was built on swampy land. The location was not chosen by chance. It symbolized Artemis's connection with nature, her power over land and water. The swamp was believed to protect the temple from destructive earthquakes, which confirmed the mythological property of the place. The choice of a swampy place for the construction of the Temple of Artemis may have been related not only to the symbolic meaning, but also to engineering considerations, since the swampy soil could serve as a shock absorber during earthquakes, mitigating their destructive impact. The wonder of the world was its significance to ancient people. This place embodied not only engineering prowess, but also a deep faith in a goddess who personified hope, protection, and prosperity. People came here not only for the rituals, but also to feel the touch of something great, divine, and timeless. The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus was not only grand in scale, but also stunning in its architectural beauty and elegance. Its builders and sculptors used innovative techniques and exquisite materials to create a temple that has come to symbolize the excellence of ancient Greek architecture. The temple was dedicated to Artemis, one of the most revered goddesses of the Greek pantheon. She personified nature, hunting, fertility, and the protection of women. Artemis was the goddess who was called upon to help bear children and protect young virgins, and her connection to nature was emphasized by the image of a huntress surrounded by wild animals. In Ephesus, she was especially revered as the goddess of fertility and patroness of the city, associating her with the abundance and prosperity of the region. It is these aspects of her cult that are reflected in the architecture and decoration of the temple. The cult of Artemis in Ephesus, with its emphasis on fertility, nature, and the protection of women, was closely linked to the life and well-being of the city, making the Temple of Artemis not only a religious center but also an important part of Ephesus' social and cultural life. The temple was built in the Ionic style, known for its elegance and proportions. Its massive columns, about 20 meters high, not only supported the roof, but also created a sense of lightness and harmony. The temple had a total of 127 columns, each covered with carvings depicting mythological scenes, patterns, and symbols associated with the goddess Artemis. Some of the columns were so exquisitely decorated that they were considered works of art in themselves. The main part of the temple was built of marble, which made it shine in the sun. Precious materials such as gold and ivory were used to create some of the details which emphasized the wealth and grandeur of Ephesus. The carved panels that adorned the walls and porticos depicted scenes from myths related to Artemis, hunting, and nature. These bas-reliefs not only decorated the temple, but also told stories that were familiar to every visitor. The centerpiece of the temple was the statue of Artemis, which was a masterpiece in itself. She was made of gold and ivory, and her clothing was covered with images of animals and fertility symbols, such as bees and deer. This emphasized the goddess's connection to nature and her role as patroness of all living things. The statue is described as having a solemn and majestic appearance, causing awe in everyone who entered the temple. The statue of Artemis of Ephesus, with her numerous breasts symbolizing fertility and abundance, was a unique iconographic image that differed from traditional Greek depictions of the goddess and reflected local cultic features. Another unique feature of the temple was its roof. It was covered with terracotta tiles and decorated with sculptural elements, such as the acroteria, figures placed on the edges and top of the roof. These sculptures depicted mythological creatures and symbols associated with Artemis and added further decorative richness to the temple. Special attention was paid to the location of the temple. It was built so that it harmonized with the surrounding landscape. The temple stood on a massive marble base, which protected it from the moisture of the marshy soil. This base itself was decorated with carvings and served as a symbolic passage between the earthly and sacred territory dedicated to the goddess. Equally impressive, the interior space was arranged to direct the visitor's gaze toward the statue of Artemis. Light entered the temple through windows high in the walls, creating the effect of a mysterious glow that seemed to emanate from the statue itself. The floor of the temple was laid with marble slabs and decorated with valuable stones, which added even more luxury to the interior decoration. This masterpiece of ancient architecture was repeatedly destroyed, but each time it was rebuilt, reflecting not only the skill of the builders, but also the deep devotion of the people of Ephesus to their goddess. The first significant destruction occurred in 356 BC, when the temple was burned down by Herostratus. The fire destroyed the wooden elements and the roof, and damaged the statue of Artemis. This act caused great anger among the people of Ephesus and the entire Greek world. Herostratus' name was cursed, and they tried to erase him from history by banning references to him. However, instead of leaving the place in ruins, the people of Ephesus decided to rebuild the temple with even greater luxury. Thanks to generous donations from all over Greece, as well as the financial support of Alexander the Great, the temple was rebuilt and became even more magnificent than before, with even more exquisite decorations and improved construction. This rebuilding became a symbol of perseverance and faith, proving that culture and religion can overcome even the most difficult challenges. The rebuilding of the Temple of Artemis after the fire of Herostratus, thanks to the efforts of the people of Ephesus and the support of Alexander the Great, was a testament not only to their wealth and power, but also to their deep devotion to their goddess and their desire to preserve the greatness of their city. But tragedy did not bypass the temple in the future. In the 3rd century AD, Ephesus was attacked by the Goths, who sacked the city and destroyed the temple. This event was a turning point in its history. The temple was never again restored to its full scale. By this time, the influence of Christianity was growing in the region, and the cult of Artemis began to fade away. The remains of the temple were used as building material for new buildings, including Christian churches, including the famous Hagia Sophia Cathedral in Constantinople. The final destruction occurred as a result of natural disasters, earthquakes, which repeatedly shook the region, destroyed the remains of the temple. By the 6th century AD, the place where once stood one of the greatest wonders of the world turned into abandoned ruins. Despite this, the memory of the Temple of Artemis continued to live on in ancient texts and legends. In the 19th century, archaeologists began excavations in Ephesus, discovering the remains of the temple's foundations, as well as fragments of its columns and decorations. These discoveries made it possible to reconstruct a general idea of its grandeur and significance. Today, the site where the temple stood attracts travelers from all over the world, The site where the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus once stood is now an archaeological site near the town of Selçuk in Turkey, one of the most famous sites of the ancient world. Although only ruins of the temple itself remain, modern visitors can see traces of the foundations, a few restored columns and fragments of marble blocks that remind them of the once majestic structure. The ruins of the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus, despite its current state, continue to attract tourists and archaeologists, reminding them of the former greatness and cultural significance of this ancient wonder of the world. Moving from the grandeur of the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus, we move to the city of Halicarnassus, located on the coast of the Aegean Sea, modern Bodrum in Turkey. It was here that another wonder of the world was located, a majestic mausoleum built in honor of King Mausolus and his wife Artemisia. This monument became not only a symbol of eternal love and devotion, but also an embodiment of the ambitions of the rulers who wanted to leave their mark on history. Mausolus ruled Caria in the 4th century BC. His dominions were under the influence of the Persian Empire, but he was in fact an independent ruler, skillfully maneuvering between the great powers of his time. Mausolus was an outstanding politician and strategist. He consolidated his power, expanded the borders of Caria, and turned Halicarnassus into a thriving cultural and economic center. One of his major achievements was the transfer of the capital of Caria to Halicarnassus, where he began a grandiose construction, including fortifications, palaces, and, of course, the mausoleum, which would later become legendary. However, Mausolus was known not only for his political activities, but also for his close relationship with his wife and sister Artemisia. Their marriage was not just familial, but also political. Artemisia was not only a faithful companion of Mausolus, but also his equal in governing the state. She was characterized by intelligence, education, and a desire to enhance the greatness of Caria. Together they created a cultural heritage that has been admired by contemporaries and posterity. Mausolus and Artemisia, the rulers of Caria, were not only a married couple, but also political partners who jointly governed the state and strove for its prosperity and cultural development. In 353 BC, Artemisia was devastated by the loss of Mausolus. To memorialize him and express her love, she decided to build a grand mausoleum. This monument was not only to be a burial place, but also to symbolize the greatness of Mausolus and Caria. Legends say that Artemisia grieved the loss of her husband so deeply that she even drank the ashes of Mausolus so that she could always carry a piece of him with her. While this fact may be an exaggeration, it emphasizes the depth of her grief and devotion. Artemisia enlisted the best craftsmen and architects of her time to build the mausoleum, including Satyrus and Pythias, as well as the famous sculptors Scopas, Leochar, Bryaxides, and Timotheus. Not only did she finance the creation of this marvel, but she personally supervised every stage to make sure that the mausoleum would become worthy of her husband's immortalization. The mausoleum at Halicarnassus was more than just a tomb. It became a symbol of love, devotion, and ambition. Its grandeur set the stage for future architectural masterpieces and cemented Mausolus's name in history. Artemisia has forever gone down in history as a woman capable of transforming her grief into the greatest work of art. The mausoleum in Halicarnassus, built by Artemisia in memory of Mausolus, became not only a tomb, but also a symbol of eternal love and devotion, as well as a monument of architectural and artistic genius that gave its name to all subsequent monumental tombs, mausoleums. The mausoleum in Halicarnassus was not only the burial place of King Mausolus and his wife Artemisia, but also an outstanding architectural masterpiece that was striking in its unique composition. Its design combined elements of Greek, Carian, and Persian architecture, symbolizing the versatility of Carian culture and its connection with different civilizations. The height of the mausoleum was about 45 meters, making it one of the tallest buildings of its time, on a massive rectangular base of white marble. The base, which was a stepped platform, symbolized strength and grandeur, creating a strong foundation for the entire structure. Above the base were rows of Ionic columns that surrounded the tomb. There were 36 columns in total, supporting the lightness and elegance of the structure. Between the columns were decorative panels with bas-reliefs depicting scenes from mythology and great feats, emphasizing the idea of the divine greatness of mausoleum. The pyramidal roof of the mausoleum attracted special attention. It consisted of 24 stepped layers that converged to a summit topped by a statue depicting a chariot. This figure, made of marble, symbolized the triumph and greatness of Mausolus. The chariot, driven by Mausolus himself, was an expression of his power and immortality, as if he were embarking on an eternal journey. The architectural composition of the mausoleum in Halicarnassus, combining elements of different architectural styles, created a unique and inimitable image, striking with its harmony and grandeur. The sculptural decoration of the mausoleum deserves special admiration. 4 famous sculptors, Bryaxis, Scopas, Leochar, and Timotheus, each responsible for decorating a different side of the building, creating scenes that reflected not only the lives of Mausolus and Artemisia, but also their cultural heritage. Among the most famous depictions were battles of the Amazons, sea scenes, and scenes involving gods and heroes. Each side of the mausoleum had a unique style, reflecting the skill and individuality of the artists. Life-size statues of Mausolus and Artemisia. These statues were placed on top of the mausoleum, emphasizing their role as rulers worthy of worship. The detail of the sculptures, including the folds of clothing, facial expressions, and the dynamics of the poses, showed outstanding craftsmanship. Although the mausoleum has long since been destroyed, parts of this magnificent structure have survived and provide a glimpse of its former grandeur. Thanks to these findings, archaeologists and historians can understand how the tomb was organized and appreciate the skill of the ancient architects and sculptors. One of the most valuable surviving fragments are parts of sculptural compositions. They were found during excavations in the 19th century and are now preserved in the British Museum in London. Among them are relief panels depicting battles of the Amazons, sea scenes, and mythical creatures. These details not only demonstrate the artistic skill of the era, but also reveal the cultural context in which the mausoleum was created. The depictions of lions represent the strength and power of King Mausolus and his entourage, and show how valued the themes of war and heroism were at the time. Of particular importance are fragments of columns and architectural details that have preserved traces of painting and carving. These elements confirm that the mausoleum combined several styles: Greek, Carian, and Persian. For example, the preserved capitals of the Ionic order testify to the influence of classical Greek architecture, and some decorative motifs point to Persian influence. This emphasizes the status of Halicarnassus as a cultural crossroads where the traditions of East and West intersected. There is also evidence of a pyramidal roof on the mausoleum. A piece of tile was discovered, which, according to the researchers, was part of the roof. It clearly demonstrates how ambitious the idea was to create a huge pyramid over the colonnade, topped with a chariot sculpture. Another source of information about the mausoleum is the written testimony of ancient authors such as Vitruvius and Pliny the Elder, as well as later chronicles and travelers. Their descriptions, supplemented by archaeological finds, make it possible to reconstruct the general appearance of the mausoleum and to understand the role it played in the life of Halicarnassus. Taken together, the surviving fragments and descriptions form a complete picture of the mausoleum as a masterpiece of art and engineering. The sculptural decoration of the mausoleum in Halicarnassus, created by the best sculptors of their time, was not only a decorative element, but also an important part of its symbolic meaning, telling stories of the greatness, heroism, and mythological legacy of the rulers of Caria. They help to realize how high the skill level of ancient architects and sculptors was, as well as to understand how this tomb influenced the development of architecture in the Mediterranean region. The mausoleum is not only a monument to the memory of King Mausolus, but also a convincing testament to the cultural diversity and creative genius of the ancient world. After the mausoleum in Halicarnassus, we are transferred to the sunny island of Rhodes, where stood another of the 7 wonders, the Colossus of Rhodes. This monument, which glorified the sun, god Helios, became a symbol of courage and strength, inspiring not only the inhabitants of the island, but also the entire ancient world. Rhodes, located in the heart of the Aegean Sea, was famous for its strategic position and naval power. In 305 BC, after a year of siege by Demetrius IV Poliorcetes, ruler of Cyprus, the Rhodesians defended their city, becoming a symbol of steadfastness and steadfastness. Demetrius, defeated, was forced to leave behind his siege machines, which became the spoils of the victors. The people of Rhodes decided to immortalize their victory and thank Helios, who was considered the patron saint of the city. The spoils of the siege were sold, and the proceeds were used to build a grandiose monument, the Colossus of Rhodes. This statue was not only to emphasize the greatness and independence of Rhodes, but also to send a message to the world about the strength and unity of the island. The Colossus of Rhodes, erected in honor of the god Helios, became a symbol of the victory of the Rhodesians over their enemies, their independence and prosperity, as well as the power and wealth of the island of Rhodes, an important maritime and commercial center of the ancient world. The sculptor of the Colossus was Hares of Lind. Legends say that it took 12 years to build the Colossus. The height of the statue was about 33 meters, making it one of the tallest structures in the ancient world. The Colossus depicted the sun god Helios in a proud pose. His face faced the sea, and his head was adorned with a crown of sunbeams, symbolizing his divine radiance. Helios held a torch in one of his hands, pointing the way for mariners, and his appearance inspired reverence and confidence in the defense of the island. There is a popular myth that Colossus stood at the entrance to the harbor, and ships passed between his feet. Although this version is most likely fiction, it emphasizes the grandeur of the statue and reinforces its legendary nature. In reality, the Colossus was most likely placed on land close to the harbor, so that it could be seen from afar as a symbol of protection and prosperity. The construction of the Colossus of Rhodes became a symbol of victory, not only because of its grandiose size, but also because of the deep symbolism that the people of Rhodes put into it. This statue was not just a monument to Helios, it symbolized the unity, pride, and power of the city, which was able to resist a strong enemy. The very process of erecting the Colossus was an act of collective triumph. All sectors of society participated in the project, from the sale of trophies to the work of construction. The townspeople were not just building a statue, they were creating a symbol of their steadfastness and independence that would be understood by all. Each contribution to the construction strengthened the sense of community and mutual support among the inhabitants. The collective labor and enthusiasm of the citizens of Rhodes, invested in the construction of the Colossus, made it not only a monument to the god Helios, but also a symbol of unity and solidarity of the Rhodesian people, capable of overcoming any difficulties. It is important to note that the very idea of creating the Colossus as an offering to Helios epitomized the Rhodesians' belief in divine justice. They believed that their victory had been bestowed upon them from above. The statue was a visible reminder that even the most powerful opponents could be defeated if they acted with determination and faith. Another important point was the location of the Colossus. It was erected in such a place that it would greet ships approaching Rhodes and impress visitors and traders. This was not only symbolic, but also a practical statement of Rhodes's status as a center of power and trade in the Mediterranean. The statue literally looked out to sea, welcoming travelers and making it clear that Rhodes is a city that cannot be conquered. Although the Colossus of Rhodes became a symbol of triumph and power, its fate was tragic. This grandiose monument was destroyed in one of the most devastating earthquakes of antiquity. The tragedy occurred around 226 BC, when a powerful earthquake shook the island of Rhodes. The Colossus, which towered to a height of about 33 meters, could not withstand the strong tremors and collapsed. According to ancient sources, massive fragments were scattered over the territory. Despite this, even in its ruined state, the Colossus continued to fascinate those who saw it. Pliny the Elder wrote that many travelers came to Rhodes just to see the remains of this gigantic statue. The destruction of the Colossus of Rhodes by an earthquake, despite the tragic nature of the event, only increased its legendary and symbolic significance, emphasizing the greatness and fragility of human creations in the face of the forces of nature. After the earthquake, the people of Rhodes sought help from the oracle at Delphi to find out whether the Colossus should be rebuilt. However, the oracle advised to leave the statue destroyed, explaining it as a sign of the will of the gods. The Rhodesians obeyed the prophecy, and the remains of the Colossus remained in place for several centuries. Fragments of the statue lay on the ground until the 7th century AD, when Arab conquerors took over Rhodes. According to the chronicles, the remains of the Colossus were dismantled and sold for metal. Legend has it that it took 900 camels to transport these fragments. Though short-lived, the grandeur and symbolic legacy of the Colossus lives on. It is a symbol of courage and unity, inspiring not only ancient authors but also subsequent generations. The Colossus of Rhodes became an archetype of grand statues and has served as inspiration for many sculptures, including the famous Statue of Liberty in New York. Even in ruins, the Colossus of Rhodes continued to inspire and delight, becoming a symbol not only of the ancient world, but also a source of inspiration for future generations of artists, sculptors, and engineers whose creations bear echoes of its majesty and symbolism. After the Colossus of Rhodes, standing as a symbol of strength and unity, we travel to Egypt, where the lighthouse of Alexandria stood on the island of Pharaohs. This marvel of the world impressed not only with its artistic skill, but also had great practical significance, becoming one of the most important navigational structures of the ancient world. The Lighthouse of Alexandria was built around the 3rd century BC, during the reign of Ptolemy II Philadelphus. Alexandria was at that time one of the largest trade and cultural centers of the Mediterranean. Founded by Alexander the Great, the city quickly became an important hub of international trade. Its harbor, protected by the island of Pharos, welcomed ships from all over the known world, but underwater rocks and shallow waters made entry dangerous. The need for a lighthouse was driven by a desire to ensure the safety of mariners and to reinforce Alexandria's status as a major seaport. The lighthouse became a symbol of the technological progress and ambitions of the Hellenistic era. Its height of over 100 meters made it the tallest structure of its time. It was the first lighthouse of this scale, and its light was said to be visible up to 50 kilometers away. The lighthouse reflected sunlight from a metal mirror, and at night a huge fire burned on its top, which was maintained by special services. For sailors, the lighthouse was a guiding star that saved them from danger. Many ancient authors admired its work, describing how it helped ships reach the harbor safely, even in stormy weather. But the lighthouse was not only important to seafarers, it reinforced Alexandria's role as a center of trade, culture, and science. Its light seemed to say to anyone approaching the city, "You have arrived at the center of the world." The Lighthouse of Alexandria also symbolized the power and wealth of the Ptolemaic rulers. It was proof of their ability to combine engineering achievement with ambitions to become leaders of the Hellenistic world. Alexandria attracted not only traders, but also scholars, travelers, and artists who admired its grandeur. The Lighthouse of Alexandria, which stood on the island of Pharos, became not only a navigational structure, but also a symbol of Alexandria's progress, knowledge, and cultural greatness, attracting scholars, traders, and travelers from all over the known world to the city. The Lighthouse of Alexandria was not just an engineering achievement of its time, but a true masterpiece of architecture and technology that influenced the development of construction over the centuries. Its design combined innovative solutions that allowed it not only to fulfill its main function, but also to withstand the tests of time and nature. The lighthouse was built from large blocks of light-colored limestone, making it visible even at great distances. These blocks were connected using lead brackets, which gave the structure strength and resistance to earthquakes that often occurred in the region. This was an advanced solution for its time, as it allowed the blocks to move slightly during tremors, preventing collapse. The lighthouse structure was divided into 3 levels, each with its own role. The lower part was a massive square foundation that provided stability for the entire structure. The middle level was an octagonal tower, which reduced wind resistance and helped distribute the load evenly. The upper level, a cylindrical tower, was the lightest and ended with a platform on which a fire burned. This 3-tiered solution not only gave the lighthouse visual sophistication, but also ensured its stability through the centuries. One of the most amazing technological features was the mirror used to reflect sunlight. The polished metal surface allowed light rays to be directed over long distances, greatly improving visibility during the day. At night, a large fire was lit at the top of the lighthouse, the light of which was also amplified by the mirror. This was one of the first examples of the use of reflective technology in architecture. The innovative engineering solutions used in the construction of the Alexandria Lighthouse made it not only a functional navigational structure, but also an architectural masterpiece that was ahead of its time. and influenced the development of lighthouse construction throughout the centuries. The longevity of the lighthouse is explained not only by the quality of the materials and elaborate construction, but also by its symbolic significance for the Ptolemies. The lighthouse was not just a functional structure, but a symbol of their power and prowess, so it was built using the best technology and resources of the time. Nevertheless, even the genius of engineering could not fully protect the lighthouse from the destructive forces of nature. The Lighthouse of Alexandria stood for several centuries, remaining not only a navigational landmark but also a cultural symbol. However, a series of strong earthquakes, especially in 956, 1303, and 1323, caused irreparable damage. In the 14th century, the lighthouse was finally reduced to ruins, and its stones were used to build the fortress that stands on the site to this day. The Alexandria Lighthouse on the island of Pharos had a huge impact on the development of lighthouses as navigational structures. Its innovative design and scale set the standard for lighthouse construction in subsequent eras. It is not just a marvel of the ancient world, but a model for future engineering achievements. First of all, the Lighthouse of Alexandria laid down the concept of the lighthouse as a multifunctional structure. It was not just a landmark for mariners, but also a symbol of power, strength, and cultural greatness. This idea of combining practicality with aesthetics and symbolism was reflected in the lighthouses built beyond it. Even centuries later, lighthouses did not just light the way, but became architectural landmarks that emphasized the status of port cities. The Alexandria Lighthouse had a particular impact on the technological aspects. Its multi-level structure, including a massive foundation, octagon, and cylinder, became a model for engineers and architects of the Middle Ages and New Age. For example, the three-tiered structure provided resistance to wind and earthquakes, and made it easier to maintain a fire. It became the prototype for many lighthouses built along the coasts of Europe and Asia. The technology of using a mirror to reflect light was probably inferior to modern ones in terms of efficiency, but the principle of directional light itself became the basis for the development of optics in navigation. Modern lighthouses use Fresnel lenses and complex optical systems, but it was the Lighthouse of Alexandria that originated the idea, which first demonstrated how light reflection could greatly improve visibility for mariners. The symbolic role of the lighthouse as a light in the dark was also inherited from the Pharaohs lighthouse. For mariners, the lighthouse became not only a life-saving landmark, but also a symbol of hope, overcoming danger, and getting closer to home. Many of today's lighthouses were inspired by the legend of the Lighthouse of Alexandria, including such famous structures as the Tower of Hercules in Spain and the Statue of Liberty in New York City, which is also a lighthouse, and both a symbol of greatness and freedom. Despite its destruction, the Alexandria Lighthouse has left an indelible mark on the history of lighthouse keeping, becoming the prototype for many lighthouses around the world and a symbol of hope and safety for mariners throughout the centuries. Let's talk about the fate of the 7 wonders of the world. Why haven't most of them survived? The answer is simple and complex at the same time. It was influenced by many factors, from natural disasters to human carelessness. Just imagine these majestic structures erected in ancient times without the technology that could have protected the buildings from destruction. Architects and builders reached the heights of excellence using stone, wood, and marble. But even the strongest materials are susceptible to destruction. Natural disasters played their part. For example, the mausoleum in Halicarnassus, which stood for several hundred years, was destroyed by an earthquake. Earthquakes do not spare even the most sturdy structures, breaking them under the weight of their own weight. Human activity has also caused loss. The Lighthouse of Alexandria, which proudly towered over the Mediterranean Sea, was partially destroyed by earthquakes, but finally dismantled by people who used its stones for construction. Other wonders suffered a similar fate. Some perished in wars, some withered and were reused, some were simply forgotten. But perhaps the most dramatic loss was the Library of Alexandria. Although not directly among the 7 wonders, it symbolizes the same pain of loss as the Colossus of Rhodes or the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus. Destroyed by fire, this treasure trove of knowledge was lost forever. The fate of the 7 wonders of the world, most of which have not survived to this day, reminds us of the fragility of human creations in the face of time and natural disasters. and of the importance of preserving cultural heritage for future generations. In pursuit of glory, the rulers who built the wonders of the world hoped to make history, but both empires and wonders faded or lost influence over time. The Egyptian pyramids survived because they were too massive and built with technology ahead of their time. The other wonders, more graceful, were vulnerable. They were not built for eternity, but to amaze contemporaries. They left a mark on history, and we still remember them as a symbol of human ambition, genius, and the pursuit of beauty. The fate of the wonders reminds us that even the greatest achievements are temporary, but the memory of them can live forever if it is preserved and passed on. The restoration and modern counterparts of the seven wonders of the world is an attempt to not only honor the ancient masterpieces, but to be inspired by them to create something new. Although the originals have been lost, with the exception of the pyramids of Giza, their grandeur has been a source of inspiration for architects, artists, and engineers around the world. Let's look at how humanity today is trying to resurrect the memory of them. Some wonders have been tried to be reconstructed literally. For example, in Turkey, archaeologists and architects are working on the site of the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus. So far, the temple exists only in the form of separate columns and ruins, but its reconstruction is not only a technical task, but also a cultural project aimed at restoring its former grandeur. It is hardly possible to recreate the temple completely, but modern technologies allow making detailed 3D models that convey its elegance. Modern 3D modeling technologies allow us to virtually restore the lost wonders of the world, giving us the opportunity to see them in their former splendor and imagine their grandeur and beauty. Another example of an attempt to revive an ancient wonder. Several times in history, projects have been proposed to build a new giant statue symbolizing the Colossus of Rhodes. Modern engineers have proposed more earthquake-resistant structures that can withstand earthquakes. Alexandria's inspiring lighthouse also finds its modern counterparts. Some historians and architects dream of restoring it to its full scale so that it can once again become a symbol of maritime navigation and human skill. In Egypt, the idea of creating a modern lighthouse based on the original design, but using the latest technology, has even been discussed. Besides direct restoration, we are seeing the creation of new wonders of the world that pay homage to the ancients. For example, Dubai, with its architectural ambitions, is reminiscent of ancient civilizations that strive to create the impossible. The Burj Khalifa, a majestic tower like a modern colossus, rises above the city, demonstrating the power of modern technology. The harmony of nature and art inspired by the Hanging Gardens is evident in projects like the Vertical Gardens in Singapore or the famous Rooftop Garden in Milan. These modern gardens show how ancient dreams of paradise on earth are reflected in our era. The fate of the seven wonders reminds us that human inspiration is eternal. We cannot bring back the past, but each new project is not only a tribute, but also a reminder that the human dream, like history itself, continues. Modern architectural marvels inspired by ancient masterpieces demonstrate that the human desire for grandeur, beauty, and innovation does not fade with time, but only takes new forms, reflecting the achievements of modern science and technology.